Have you ever been overcome by righteous indignation? Well, such is the case for me right now when I picked up my issue of the New England Journal of Medicine, March 29th issue this year, and read an article entitled Polluting Developing Brains, EPA Failure on Chlorpyrifos. And it got me thinking about chlorpyrifos, and I went way back in my previous history as a young parent, back in the late 1960s, with the development of something that was to be put in the bedrooms of all of us, including children. And in this case, we had an infant son. When the windows were open and no screens in the summer, and this would kill bugs. It was called the no pest strip. And then later, with more extensive evaluation, has found that this no pest strip was working by releasing this nerve gas agent that was a very close chemical relative of the family of organophosphates, of which chlorpyrifos belongs. Chlorpyrifos, it turns out, is one of the most highly used agricultural pesticides in growing of vegetable and fruit crops in the United States. And it's been under examination for the better part of 25 years, with the EPA actively involved since 1995 in trying to find ways of regulating it and ultimately getting it out of our food production system. In fact, it finally ended up in 2016 with a EPA mandate that this particular agricultural chemical would be eliminated from all foods, zero tolerance, and therefore would stop being used in agriculture as we know it. Well, that's all well and good until 2017 with a new administration and a new Secretary of the EPA, Scott Pruitt, who, based upon his judgment in the absence of his scientific advisory group and medical advisory group and the existing mandate from the law, he made the decision, no, we're going to put that aside and we will continue to allow the use of chlorpyrifos on our agricultural lands. Now, there are many parts of this that are very scary. Over those 25 years, from 1995 until 2016, many different studies were done and different evaluations and reports, one of which showed, in a review of the evidence, that in children 0 to 5, and 25 million children reviewed kind of the relative risk these kids as infants and children would have from the exposure to low levels of this chemical, it was found that it could reduce IQ points by 16.9 million IQ points because of its adverse effect on neurocognitive development. And it would also be associated with the increased risk to attention-related hyperactivity disorder. So when you start putting this together, you say, well, what are we doing? Even on the presumption of data that would suggest that this chemical can cause that degree of harm to sensitive children and infants, that we're allowing it now to be used continually in the face of all this evidence? So what is this? This is a regulation by executive fiat and decree that Scott Pruitt, as Attorney General in Oklahoma, who was known to be the person bringing the state EPA to court, in which he lost almost all of those battles of EPA regulations at the state of Oklahoma level, now, because of him being the Secretary of the EPA, is able, with executive fiat, to put at all of this science that had been done by his own scientific group within the EPA, suggesting this was a harmful chemical and should be removed from the environment. This is a scary trend. This is the value of a few for the expense of many. It's exactly the wrong way for us to go as a society, as a nation, as a country that's in peril with all sorts of things that erode our health, erode our ability to think and act clearly, and it goes along the list of insidious forces, I believe, that undermine the integrity of what we as a country, people free and equal to have good health and good life to achieve that outcome. So yes, I have righteous indignation, and I think it's well justified. And as we move forward, we must align to fight back against this darkness. One might say, well, we need this agricultural chemical to prevent bugs growing in our fields, but we've learned very clearly that this particular agricultural chemical is not necessary. We can have a sustained agricultural system that's still economically very viable and still providing occupations for generations to the farming community in the absence of the use of this chemical. It's the value of a few for the expense of many. It cannot be tolerated. Thanks for listening.